Why did birds survive? Why are they only the dinosaurs that survived the asteroid? And one of the things that seems really quirky, really nuanced, like how could you ever predict this? One of these quirks of evolutionary history. But the birds that survived were the ones that had beaks. There were still lots of birds that had teeth that died out when the asteroid hit, the teeth of their velociraptor ancestors. But the ones that survived had beaks. They could eat seeds. Seeds can last in the soil for a long time. Yeah. And so if you could eat seeds, you would have access to one of the last food sources.
Steve Brusatte, welcome to Particles
Hakeem,
of Thought.
Thanks for having me. It's great. We both have our new books out, so it's cool we can be here together.
Absolutely.
This week the books are released.
Yeah, so I'm going to say this for our listeners. If you haven't gotten either of our books, I blurbed Steve's book, and Steve blurbed my book.
And here we are.
And this was not planned. We had no idea.
It absolutely was not.
I'm going to get to your book in this interview, sir. That's going to be the whole second topic.
Right.
But listen, you are an expert on dinosaurs, so let's get the obvious question out of the way right now. What's your favorite dinosaur?
T-Rex.
Yeah. T-Rex. Okay.
It is. My second
Why?
favorite dinosaur, though, I must say, is a goldcrest, which is a bird. It's the tiniest bird we have in Europe. We'll get to that later, I know, the dinosaur bird
currently?
connection. Currently, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so my favorite is T-Rex, the ultimate predator,
Yes.
the bust-size, meat-eating, bone-crunching monster. But my second favorite is the tiniest bird we have in Europe, in Scotland, where I live now.
Wow.
And to me, that connection between something as giant and primeval and reptilian as
Yes.
T-Rex, and then this cute little bird the size of a golf ball.
Wow.
That's what I love about dinosaurs. They span millions, hundreds of millions of years of time, and they still do persist today. We still have animals that carry on that legacy of T-Rex.
Yes, those are real dinosaurs. Hey, so let me ask me a Hakeem question, because I told this to the staff, and I go off script a little bit. So I have identified over the course of my life the bird with the most delicious skin,
Okay.
the mammal with the most delicious skin,
Okay.
and the fish with the most delicious skin.
Just skin.
Skin,
Okay.
and fried.
Yeah,
Yeah,
of course.
so
Yeah,
the-
you're not going to want to boil skin, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. You're from Scotland. You're living in Scotland. They might
Yeah,
boil skin
I'm
in
from
Scotland.
Illinois originally. We
right.
wouldn't boil skin. Yeah, but maybe in Scotland.
But I'm going to name what they are. They are the chicken,
Yeah.
the pig, and if you don't know, the golden pompano.
Okay, I didn't know that one. I
Yeah,
would agree
very
with
few
your
people
first
do.
two.
If you live
Yeah.
on the coast of Florida, you may, because you can
Okay.
just catch them from the beach.
Okay.
But
Okay.
what is the dinosaur with the most delicious skin?
Oh, see, now we're getting into the real question. I don't know.
Would
I
it be an
think.
herbivore?
Oh, I think so. I think usually it's the animals that eat plants,
Yes,
not the
yes.
animals that eat a lot of meat and fish and all kinds of stuff that end up tasting better. So let's go with Triceratops. Triceratops was
thinking.
good because a pig. We know
Right.
pigs, and they were kind of big pig versions of dinosaurs, if we can.
Yeah. So
This is
now
the
we have
hardcore
it.
science.
Now we have
I
it. You're the
love
first in the world.
There we go.
Make that identification.
Triceratops belly,
All right.
fried Triceratops
All right.
belly. There
So
you go.
when you say Tyrannosaurus, like most of us think Tyrannosaurus Rex,
Yeah.
but that's not the only Tyrannosaur, right?
That's right. So
Yeah.
T-Rex was the last member of a great family of dinosaurs, really a dynasty of dinosaurs that stretched for more than 100 million years.
Wow.
Now, T-Rex lived here in North America. It was the American tyrant. It ruled the end of the Cretaceous, and it lived about 66 to 67 million years ago. And it was literally the size of a bus.
Yeah.
It was like 40 feet long. I mean, it weighed 7 or 8 tons. But it came from ancestors that lived way back in the Jurassic period, about 170 million years ago. And those ancestors, they were about my size.
Okay.
So smaller than you,
Right.
but my size.
The ancestors of the T-Rex were smaller.
The founding members of that tyrannosaur family were these small, fast-running, fleet-footed, long-limbed, quite intelligent hunters. And they were not at the top of the food chain, though. They were second or third tier, and they had to bide their time, and they had to endure millions of years of upheaval, of rising and falling sea levels, of changing temperatures, of volcanoes, of extinctions in order to get that opportunity to go to the top of the food chain and become the great T-Rexes.
So what you point out is all those changes that are happening geologically over tens of millions and hundreds of millions of years. So when you say North America, you mean the slab of Earth crust that we now identify as North America. But at the time, was it connected to what we now call the Eastern Hemisphere, the Eurasian and African land masses? Or
Yeah. So, as you know, the planet Earth is very old. And of course, Earth is part of, a solar system that's been around for 4.5 billion years and a universe that's much older. The Earth has changed so dramatically and continues to change. I mean, the continents are moving now. Whenever there's an earthquake, that is the Earth lurching. But even when there's not an earthquake, the continents are moving about at the pace our fingernails grow.
Yeah.
And so when the age of dinosaurs started, the very first dinosaurs lived about 230 million years ago in the Triassic period.
Yeah.
All the land was together as the supercontinent of Pangaea, this giant slab of crust that stretched from North Pole to the South Pole, surrounded by a single global ocean. And that's where dinosaurs got their start. But then that supercontinent broke apart. We see that with Africa and South America.
Yeah.
They look like puzzle pieces because they are.
Right.
They did once fit together. And the amazing thing about dinosaurs is that they started on that supercontinent and then they were along for the ride as it broke apart and as it changed. And that's true also of mammals. It's true of the birds that spun off from dinosaurs. So when I write these books, like the new one, The Story of Birds, that tells the history of birds and how birds evolved from dinosaurs, which I know we'll get to later. But a lot of that story, or the story I talk about in The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, the dinosaur book I did, is what these animals are doing as the Earth is changing, how they're responding, and not just to the continents moving, but to changes in temperature and sea level. And ultimately, when it comes down to, T-Rex is cool, my favorite dinosaur.
Yeah.
But the reason we study dinosaurs and other fossils is because we want to know how real animals, real ecosystems have responded to real changes in climate and environment over time. And I think that's quite important in this day and age for us to understand.
And those are even more drastic changes, right?
Absolutely. And the Earth's been through pretty much everything. There have been times of supervolcanoes. There have been times when asteroids have smashed into the Earth. There's been times of extreme climate change, ice ages and global warming, and everything in between. So we can learn a whole lot from the history of the Earth. And it's the fossils that tell that story, the fossils and the rocks. That's the archive that allows us as paleontologists to figure out how the Earth and how life has changed over time.
Well, let's talk about how T-Rex changed. So those early T-Rexes, did they have like the short forearms?
No, they didn't. So that's a part of the T-Rex story that's really neat, that the very first ones were very traditional meat-eating dinosaurs.
Quadrupeds, like 4 feet on the ground?
They walked on their hind legs, so they were only walking on their hind legs, but their arms were pretty long, and their arms had a wide range of motion. They had 3 big fingers. They had claws at the end of those fingers, and they surely used those arms to grab prey, when they were hunting. Their heads were not that big. They had a nice toothy smile. They had steak knife teeth, but they were slender, long-legged, fast-running, arms for grabbing prey. And then over the course of 100 million years of evolution, you have this trend in tyrannosaurs where they get bigger, their bodies get bigger. And it doesn't happen gradually. It really happens in pulses when some of their competitors go extinct and there's a job open at the top of the food chain and they balloon out. But as their bodies got bigger, their heads got bigger and their arms got smaller.
So disproportionately bigger.
Exactly.
Compared to the rest of the body.
And it seems like the heads, in something like a T-Rex, the heads were doing all the work. They were like land sharks. They were leading with their head. They were grabbing their food with their head. They were crushing their food. They were swallowing their food. The arms weren't doing much. Their arms were about the size of our arms.
Wow.
Yeah, but more muscular. Certainly more muscular than me. And so they were still doing something. They were probably using their arms. We don't know for sure. We debate this a lot, but probably to brace themselves, maybe when they were feeding, or maybe during mating, or maybe if they were grappling for food, or
hug their babies.
Hug their little tiny babies. Yeah, they would have laid eggs and had these very cute little babies that would grow into tyrants.
Yes.
So maybe the arms, they keep them warm.
Particles of Thought is supported by Carlisle Companies, a manufacturer of innovative building envelope systems. With buildings responsible for over 1/3 of total energy use, Carlisle's energy-efficient solutions are built to reduce strain on the energy grid. For example, Carlisle's Ultra Touch denim insulation, made from sustainable recycled cotton fibers, delivers energy efficiency while being safe to handle and easy to install. Made with 80% recycled denim, Ultra Touch diverts nearly 20 million pounds of textile waste from landfills each year. Operating across North America, Carlisle is working towards a more sustainable future. Learn more at carlisle.com. Man, so if there's when they start, you have a change from an ancestor. So does that mean that, like the human family broke off into all these different humans that were there simultaneously? So does it become the case you have all these simultaneous tyrannosaur cousins that are competing and occupying niches? Is that the case?
Yeah, we see that. We see that the first tyrannosaurs were, again, pretty small, but also, quite localized, and there weren't a whole lot of species. And over time, that family tree diversifies. And by the end of the age of dinosaurs, you have a bunch of tyrannosaurs living at the same time. And they're only living, though, in North America and Asia, because the continents have moved apart so much that it's other groups of predators that are really ruling down south. You have these different types of big meat eaters in Africa and in South America. But you have, if we were to look at about 66, 67 million years ago, right before that asteroid came down and changed history. And I'm sure we can talk about that, because that's where dinosaurs and astrophysics come together.
Right.
So there would have been a whole panoply of tyrannosaurs. You would have had T-Rex at the top of the food chain here in North America, but there was a smaller tyrannosaur living with it called Nanotyrannus that was about the size of maybe like a big SUV compared to the bus-sized T-Rex. And then over in Asia, you had one called Tarbosaurus, which looked like, more or less like a T-Rex, but even shorter arms. So there was this diversity, and that is something that made them quite successful. It wasn't just that there was this one species T-Rex that was, super dominant, but it was part of a family that had survived and endured and adapted and was continuing to change up until that moment.
I even heard that there was something called Pinocchio Rex.
Yeah, that's one that we named. So that's the nickname. That's the nickname. So this is a dinosaur that I studied and I described with my dear friend Junchong Liu. Sadly, he passed a few years ago, but he was one of China's great dinosaur hunters. Yeah, he died way too young. In his 50s, he had diabetes. It was really, really tragic. But I spent so much time in China with him as a young scientist. It's people like that really were instrumental in my career. I think every career is like this, but in a science like paleontology, it's a small field. It's very collegial, actually, and is finding these friends and colleagues that give you opportunities. So I met Junchong basically when I was a student, and he invited me out to China to work with him. And in southern China, there was a big construction site. There's a building boom. I don't know if it's still happening, but this was about 15 years ago. And it was, the buildings they were putting up, the roads they were laying. There was a construction worker who he was driving a backhoe, driving a digger, and he was laying the foundation for a building, and he crunched into something. And, we stopped to take a look, and it was a petrified bone. And so construction work stopped, and they looked in the area, and they found there was basically a skeleton of a dinosaur with a big, long snout, a lot of sharp teeth. And so they called the local museum. And thankfully they did, because word also got out. There's some black market fossil dealers. And so they all kind of converged, the museum and then a few of these hucksters. And the museum got the fossil. And they brought it to the local museum. Junchong was asked to study it. And he knew that I studied tyrannosaurs from my work and my PhD. And so he invited me, and we studied it together. And it's amazing. So it's like cousin of T-Rex living in southern China with a long snout. And Junchong came up with the formal name, and he called it Chongosaurus sinensis. That's the formal Latinized, scientific name of this tyrannosaur, Chongosaurus sinensis. Okay, it's fine. It's easy enough to pronounce. I guess it's like our names, maybe a little bit unusual. People, hard to pronounce for many people. So I said, this needs a nickname. I said, so I just remember saying, it looks kind of like if T-Rex, was Pinocchio, and he told a lie in the nose. So it stuck, and we called it that, and it's fun.
The rumor is T-Rex had this brain the size of whatever, right? But at the same time, this is late in the dinosaur lineage, and typically complexity grows and smarts develop. So do we have a sense now, because there's so many times where we were like, oh, we were wrong about dinosaurs. They were colorful, they had feathers, they could they have been smart?
Absolutely. We are always learning new things about dinosaurs, and many of the ideas that you see in books, even books that weren't published that long ago, or in films, turn out to be not true or turn out to be outdated. And so one of those ideas is that dinosaurs were stupid. You see this in older books. They were dim-witted. They had small brains. Now, dinosaurs were very diverse.
Right.
T-Rexes, Stegosauruses with the plates on their backs, Triceratopses with the horns, the long-necked dinosaurs. So they're kind of like mammals today. There's a great diversity of mammals. Yeah. Some mammals are very, very intelligent, and some mammals have smaller brains, and there's everything in between. So we can tell that some dinosaurs would have been fairly intelligent, and T-Rex was actually one of them. T-Rex was a pretty smart dinosaur. And the way that we know this is from the fossils left behind. The fossils are always our clues. I mean, we're detectives. We're out there looking for clues. The fossils are
you find them next to calculus books. Is that?
Oh yeah, of course. That's right. Yeah, we can see. Yes, that's right.
In the hands of a tyrannosaur.
There you go. And the tiny hands of the tyrannosaur evolved to hold their, calculus book. What we do see is interesting, I think. We see that, we can find the fossil heads, and we can CAT scan those, just the way a medical doctor might, to see inside of us if something's wrong. And the x-rays of the CAT scanner can see inside these fossil skulls, and we can use software to build three-dimensional models of what's inside. So we can fill in the brain cavity digitally. Like the brain doesn't preserve as a fossil. At least I've never seen one.
Right.
Brains are so soft and supple, they'll decay away.
Fossilizing Jello.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But the case of the brain, the thing that held the brain cavity, is there. So we can use a software to build a digital model so we can see the size and the shape of the brain. We can compare brains between dinosaurs. We can compare them to modern animals. And that tells us that something like T-Rex was actually probably pretty smart for an animal of its size. It had a pretty big brain for a reptilian type of creature of its body size. And it had really big olfactory bulbs in its brain. Those are the things at the front that control smell. So it had a great sense of smell. It had, decent-sized optic lobes that controlled eyesight. And we can see the ears of T-Rex as well, and we can see they had pretty long cochleas.
Yeah,
and,
that's the snail in the ear.
That's the snail. In us, it looks like a snail because mammals like us have great senses of hearing. That's a real mammal hallmark. So we have these long coiled cochleas because the longer the cochlea, more or less, the greater range of sounds you can hear. So T-Rex didn't have a cochlea quite as long as ours, but for a reptilian creature, it had a long cochlea. So when you add it all together...
So relatively speaking,
for an animal of its time, for a dinosaur of the Cretaceous, it was a pretty smart animal, and it had keen senses. So one of the things I love about T-Rex, and really the reason it is my favorite dinosaur, it's not because it's big and scary, and it's not because it's a bully and it's mean and it crushed the bones of its prey and all that. Yes, it had brawn. It did, but it also had brains, and I love it. It was the ultimate predator.
Yeah.
Brain and brawns together.
Wow. So we had a guest on named Eric Jarvis.
Yes.
You know about Eric?
I know Eric. We published one research paper together. In The Story of Birds, in my new book, I profile Eric.
Oh, yeah.
Because Eric, and I won't tell his story. He would have told it here, but his background in New York, in dance, I mean, it's incredible. He's a brilliant guy, and he thinks so creatively and artistically.
Yes, I got that.
But he's one of the world experts on brains.
Well, this is what he said to me about it. He said, for example, I asked him about humans, and we were talking about birdsong, and there's this idea of vocal learning. And, that connection between the brain and the muscles and how it redirected itself to the vocal cords and that apparatus. And an element of that, he said that even in humans, we probably sang, he guesses, or speculates, or hypothesizes, before we spoke. So if you take that to this smart T-Rex, were they singing?
Oh, this is a question we need to ask Eric.
Or were they rapping? That's the
You know what? We don't know. This is one of the things that there are limits to the fossil record. Obviously, as a scientist, I never want to say never. I'm not going to tell you something's impossible the same way you're not going to tell me something's impossible.
It's an open question.
It's open, because once you say something's impossible, you just shut down the opportunity to learn and to push boundaries. But it is challenging to understand how sound evolved and how vocalizations evolved, just because
it's all soft tissue.
It's soft tissue mostly. There's no Cretaceous cassette tape. Sound doesn't fossilize.
That would have been an 8-track, sir.
Yes. I certainly would have some gramophone or I don't know what.
Right.
But there's certain things we can tell from fossils. We can CAT scan skulls, build those digital models.
A question about the skull. Yeah. So one of the things that is a common wisdom, which might be completely false, but I think it's not, is that the folds folds in the human brain. The more folds, the more surface area for computation or whatever.
Right.
Do you get imprints on the inside of the brain case that can illustrate what the surface of the brain was like?
Sometimes, it's on a case-by-case basis, but usually the...
Pun intended?
No, not pun intended. On a brain case by brain case basis. Hey, that's good.
Yeah.
This is why we're writers, right? You know, we do this without even realizing it. But sometimes, like if the bigger your brain is, and the more it fills your brain cavity, usually the more impressions it leaves on the sides of the bones. So we can tell from some, dinosaurs that some had brains that filled their cavity more than others because you see the imprint. And oftentimes it's like the blood vessels and the nerves and those bits that are impressing on the bone. So in something like T-Rex, with sound, it's tough, but we can build these models of the skulls from CAT scans, and we can digitally pass air through them and see it's through the nasal cavities. Now, it's kind of difficult with the T-Rex, but are some duck-billed dinosaurs. These are the ones that, they are what their names say.
Right,
They have these beaks that look kind of like a duck's bill, and then they had a bunch of teeth behind them. They were plant eaters, and they were big, sophisticated, bulk-feeding plant eaters living right at the end of the age of dinosaurs with T-Rex. And there's one called Parasaurolophus or Parasaurolophus, depending on your pronunciation.
Right. Potato, potato.
Exactly. It's like our names. There's various ways to pronounce them. And there's a very famous fossil from New Mexico. My colleague and my good friend Tom Williamson, he did this study where they CAT scanned it. He worked with physicists, actually, at Sandia National Labs in New Mexico, and they passed air through it. They used some of the software that instrument makers use. You're designing a new tuba, and you want to make sure it sounds the way it sounds.
Funny you mentioned that instrument. I'm a tuba player.
Are you?
Yes,
Okay. I would claim I did my research and knew that, but another coincidence. Another coincidence, like us blurbing our books and each other's books and talking here. But they did that, and they could tell that these duck-billed dinosaurs could produce these low bellowing sounds. They could probably travel long distances. Right. So we don't know for sure. Nobody was there to hear it, but by CAT scanning the skull and modeling airflow, that indicates that it could. But in a few cases, in a few very, 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 very rare cases, you get some of the vocal organs preserved as fossils.
All this stuff with Pinocchio and all this weird things you find in it, I just have to ask, what's the most surprising discovery you've encountered?
There's always, something new. And that's the thing about paleontology, that we really are detectives looking for clues. And when we go out and look for fossils, we don't really know what we're going to find. I mean, we don't know. That makes it fun. It makes it a little bit scary as well, but it does make it exhilarating.
It's kind of like people have been doing this for over 100 years. Why are you still finding anything?
Well, because there's so much to be found. I mean, the history of life is so long. The Earth's 4.5 billion years old. Yeah. And the world is big today. There's so many places that haven't been explored.
Oh, really?
So, you think of, there's large, swaths of Central Asia, let's say, that, during Soviet times, there wasn't a lot of investment there. There weren't a lot of scientists being trained, certainly paleontologists. And now these countries are opening up, and there's vast landscapes. So if you go out to places like that, you just don't know what you're going to find. So you've always got to be prepared to be surprised. I mean, my biggest surprise ever is a few years back. I was leading my team of students from the University of Edinburgh, where I teach in Scotland, our grand old university, which is amazing. It goes back to the 1580s. I can't believe it.
The land of castles.
I know. Growing up in Illinois, I never knew I'd be teaching at this 1580s.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it's an awesome university. I teach on an earth sciences course. And, we have master's students and PhD students as well. And so we bring them out pretty much every year, sometimes multiple times a year, to the Isle of Skye, which is
I've seen that.
It is enchanting.
I mean, I've not been there perfectly. I've seen it on the map. I like to just study maps.
Go one day. It is a beautiful landscape. And so a lot of that landscape, that topography, is carved out of Jurassic aged rock. And so we go there and look for fossils. There's dinosaurs, and there's crocodiles, and there's some of the ocean reptiles that live with the dinosaurs. They're about 170 million years old, and they lived back when Scotland was subtropical, which for those of us that live in Scotland...
So does that mean it was south of the tropics.
It was within like the tropical, subtropical zone. It was a little bit farther south. It was closer to the equator just because of the way continents have moved. But also the whole Earth was warmer back then.
Okay.
There were no ice caps at the poles.
Right.
Sea level was higher and just everything was warmer. But the Atlantic Ocean then had just started to open. Pangaea, the supercontinent, had just started to split a few tens of millions of years before. So you had this narrow sliver of an Atlantic Ocean. Wow. Scotland was an island in the middle, subtropical, teeming with dinosaurs. So we bring our students out, and one of our students, Amelia Penny, she was out for her first time looking for fossils, and we were walking. It was low tide. We have to wait till the tide is low to work along the coastlines. And in the drab-colored gray limestone rock of the coastline, she saw this brown object sticking out of the rock. So she took a closer look, and she saw that it had not only a different color, but it had a shape to it. It looked kind of like wedge-shaped, and it came to a point. It kind of looked like a beak. And then on each side, there were all these circles and ovals that kind of looked like teeth. And the texture of it kind of had that grainy texture that bone has. And so we took a closer look and said, "Oh my goodness, this is a skull. This is a head.
What?
This is a fossil head.
Wow.
What could it be? It has a beak. It has teeth. Whoa, what had that? Well, pterodactyls did. And so this turned out to be the head of a pterodactyl or a pterosaur. That's the common name. These were the flying reptiles that are not dinosaurs.
Right.
They're cousins of dinosaurs, although you see them in the dinosaur films and in the toy sets and everything. They're cousins. They were the first animals with bones to evolve powered flapping flight. They did that way back on Pangaea.
Yeah.
So long before birds. So they're not ancestors of birds. They have nothing to do with birds. And they flew with these giant wings of skin attached to one long finger, the ring finger. It's like E.T., the long finger. Wow. And so nobody had found one in Scotland before, just maybe one or two little scraps. So we have our student, Amelia. She makes this incredible discovery. And that skull leads to a neck, which leads to a body, which leads to wings. And we have this nearly complete skeleton of this pterodactyl with like an 8-foot wingspan, wider than a king-size bed, discovered on the Isle of Skye by a student out collecting for her first time.
Did you get the full?
We have almost all of it. Some of the bones are missing, but it's beautifully preserved. We determined it was a new species, and we described it a few years ago. We gave it a name, and we called it Yarkskianak. And that's a name that if you see it written down, you will not know how to pronounce it, I promise you, because it's from Scottish Gaelic, so the language of the Highlands and the islands.
Right.
And so it means winged reptile from Skye. And so this is this uniquely Scottish pterodactyl. So that's the most unexpected thing we've ever found.
Yeah.
That's probably the most important thing we've ever found. And we had no idea, no clue. When we started that morning looking for fossils, there was no inkling we would find something like that.
So if you could pick one moment in the entire lineage of tyrannosaurs on which to hinge that species' existence as the key moments, what would you choose?
I would choose the middle part of the Cretaceous. This was kind of between 90 and 100 million years ago. So there were already tyrannosaurs, these small human-sized ones that started the tyrannosaur family. They were successful. They were good at being smaller predators. They had that kind of wolf or jackal type of ecological niche. But then there was this burst of environmental change in the Middle Cretaceous, and we don't know a huge amount about it. There's not a lot of rocks and fossils of that age. We know there were changes in sea level. We know there were changes in temperature. We know there was some global warming, but we don't know the full picture yet. We're learning. It's one of the big blank spots. It's now no longer a blank spot. We have fossils and we have rocks, but we're developing. They had to endure that crisis. And they did endure that crisis. That extinction event knocked out a lot of their competitors. So they're the big dinosaurs that were at the top of the food chain before, the Spinosaurs and the Allosaurs and the Carcharodontosaurs and all these ones, a whole variety of big meat eaters. And so tyrannosaurs had to endure that climate and environmental change, and they did. And then on the other side of that, there was this job opening at the top of the food chain, and that's when tyrannosaurs ballooned their bodies to become these bust-sized bone-crunching monsters. But the hinge point was getting through that extinction. And we don't know how they did it, but what we do know from some really rare fossils, some fossils from Uzbekistan, I mentioned Central Asia earlier, how it's opening up. Some colleagues of mine, Sasha Avarianov, who's Russian, and Hans Suess said he was the curator at the Smithsonian. He sadly just passed, but one of the great paleontologists. They collected these fossils in Uzbekistan, invited me to help study them. And they're tyrannosaurs that come from right around that time of this extinction and this climate change. And these tyrannosaurs are the size of horses, so they're bigger than those first ones. And they have these beautiful skull fossils that we can CAT scan. And we've done that, and we can tell that their brains and their senses were getting really keen at that point in time. Yeah. So it seems like while tyrannosaurs were still relatively small, the size of horses in this case, they were not the top predators in their ecosystem. There were other bigger meat eaters and other groups of dinosaurs, but these tyrannosaurs were evolving greater intelligence and keener senses. Yeah. So could that have helped them get through this extinction? Maybe. We think it's hard to test that idea rigorously now. But regardless, they did get through the extinction, and then on the other side, they got bigger and became top predators, but they kept those big brains and those keen senses that they had evolved at smaller body size. And that's what gave T-Rex the brawn and the brains.
So Tyrannosaurus Rex was among that group of unlucky dinosaurs that all bit the dust, literally, 66 million years ago. So had that not happened, what would have occurred with that lineage? Were they thriving and set to just continue domination, or, was stress starting to kick in for them?
It really looks like the world changed in a moment 66 million years ago, probably the worst single day in the history of life. And that is when outer space met planet Earth, when this 6-mile-wide asteroid crashed into what's now Mexico. So imagine that, a 6-mile-wide rock. And I mean, you would know better than me, but this is some leftover crumb from the formation of the solar system. It could have gone anywhere. And it just so happened to make a beeline to the Earth. And it impacted with such a force that it released more than 1 billion nuclear bombs worth of energy. And it punched a hole in the face of the Earth more than 100 miles wide. You can still see a lot of that crater on the Yucatan Peninsula, Mexico, near Cancun. Most of it is covered by the water of the Gulf. You can see the outlines. You can actually, and you can see it more on the map.
Standing on the surface of Earth?
But it's so big you don't really realize what it is. But when you look at it from a distance, and especially because a lot of it's covered by the water of the Gulf, you actually need like geological surveying to see the shape of it. But there are these caves, these sinkholes, these cenotes that trace the rim of the crater in and around Cancun. So a lot of people on spring break, they go to Cancun, go to the beaches, they go diving in these caves, and these caves mark ground zero where asteroid met Earth. And it unleashed earthquakes and wildfires and hurricane-force winds and tsunamis. And I mean, we find these rocks, these layers of rocks, these tsunami deposits, where there are boulders ripped up that were the size of houses. I mean, the energy was tremendous. And we see in the geological record, in the rocks, we see the soot and the charcoal from these wildfires that ignited around the globe. And so the soot from the fires, the dust and dirt and grime from the collision would have gone up into the atmosphere. The atmosphere has currents, just like the ocean. So given a few days, maybe a few weeks at most, this stuff would have circulated around the world. The Earth would have been plunged into darkness. It would have gone cold, global nuclear winter for probably a few years, maybe even up to a decade. And that's why, more than anything, that 75% of all species died. But it probably happened quite quickly. And so if you were alive that day the asteroid hit, and T-Rex was there, and Triceratops was there, and to circle back to your question, there was no sign they were in any serious trouble. I mean, we've just found some new fossils in New Mexico that this big team that we work with Tom Williamson down at the museum in Albuquerque, and really this has been led by Andrew Flynn, who's a young geologist in New Mexico. We have this new community of dinosaurs in the Four Corners area of New Mexico, and there's tyrannosaurs, and there's long-necked dinosaurs, and there's duck-billed dinosaurs, and horned dinosaurs. We've really accurately dated that, and it was like right before the asteroid. And there's other fossils of that age from Montana. So we know across North America now, there were dinosaurs living right up. And not just a few dinosaurs, a whole bunch of them. They were thriving. So probably they would have persisted. But they didn't. And what we gather is that in this world now that's been thrown into chaos, first it's the tsunamis and the fires, but then that nuclear winter sets in. T-Rex, Triceratops, those dinosaurs had been around for over 150 million years. They were utterly dominant. But now, suddenly, their world had changed so quickly. They were left holding a bad hand of cards.
Yeah.
They were big. They needed to eat a lot of food. It took them many years to grow from a baby into an adult. They couldn't hide very easily.
And they were warm-blooded as well?
Probably some of them were. We don't know for sure.
But the T-Rexes, were they?
Probably, or approaching warm-bloodedness.
Which means they need more food.
They need more food, and they're big.
Right,
It's
and
one
they're
thing
big.
if you're warm-blooded and you're the size of a shrew, because
Right.
there were some little warm-blooded furry things the size of
Mammals
shrew
survived.
that made it through.
Yeah.
And some of the only dinosaurs that made it through were the ones with feathers and big
Wait a
wings.
minute.
that
Okay,
could fly.
that was my next question.
Yeah.
They were literally the only
The
ones?
only ones. So
Because other reptiles made it. We still have
Some did.
crocodilians.
That's right.
We still have turtles.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And that's another thing, right? You have all these different reptiles. Some of them look very dinosaur-like,
Yeah.
like pterodactyls,
Yeah.
right? Pterosaurs.
Yeah.
So, but we say but those aren't dinosaurs.
No.
So what would be an analogy to say, okay, are dinosaurs, say, like dogs, or are they more equivalent to, say, like mammals?
Yeah, they're more like mammal. A group like dinosaurs was a very diverse, very long-lived group. And just like mammals today, there are humans. I mean, we're mammals, but dogs and cats are, and rodents are, and bats are, and whales are, and elephants are. So dinosaurs were similar. They had a great diversity of
But
species
nothing else
and
looks like
size.
mammals, right? Like other reptiles look like dinosaurs.
True. That's true. So in a sense, though, because we know that some of these depictions of dinosaurs aren't really correct, which we
Right.
can get to, that's the feather story. But when the asteroid hit, the canonical dinosaurs, the big ones, they just were left exposed. They were vulnerable. It didn't matter how successful they were. It didn't matter how long they had lived, because now the world was changing so quickly around them. But these little mammals had what it took. We had ancestors that stared down that asteroid. And why? They were tiny.
Yeah.
They could hide easily. They could dig burrows. They didn't need to eat that much food. They could grow from a baby into an adult quite quickly. They could turn over the generations quickly. And similar with birds, the only dinosaurs to make it through. So imagine, I mean, it's kind of morbid because it would mean we would bite the dust, but imagine
Right.
a world, an asteroid comes down and every mammal is killed,
Right.
except for bats. And that's what
Right.
happened. And so when the asteroid hit, these birds, probably because they could fly, so they could get away from immediate dangers more easily. They were small. They were really small. They didn't need to eat tons of food. They grew super quickly.
Yeah.
Like birds today, they would have
Yeah.
grown from a baby into an adult within a few weeks, maybe a few months. They could have turned over the generations really quickly. And one thing that probably came in really handy, and in the story of birds, in the new book, I have basically a chapter about this. Why did birds survive? Why are they only the dinosaurs that survived the asteroid? And one of the things that seems really quirky, really nuanced, like how could you ever predict this? One of these quirks of evolutionary history. But the birds that survived were the ones that had beaks. There were still lots of birds that had teeth that died out when the asteroid hit, the teeth of their velociraptor ancestors. But the ones that survived had beaks. They could eat seeds, which might seem like a trivial thing, right? Today, birds eat seeds. We put seeds out in our bird feeders. But it's kind of unusual to be able to eat seeds.
It is. I have teeth. I eat seeds all
I know,
the time.
so we can do it. We're super omnivorous,
Okay.
But birds, a lot of these birds that survive were probably specialists in eating seeds. And that probably mattered because when the earth went dark and cold, no sunlight or very little sunlight. Plants couldn't photosynthesize. So the trees would have died. The forests would have collapsed. Ecosystems would have imploded.
Insects.
There would have been a lot of insects that would have died as well. Some survived, some would have died. But these ecosystems would have imploded like houses of cards. The plants die, the plant eaters die, the meat eaters die.
Yeah.
If you ate part of a growing plant, you ate flowers, you ate fruit, you ate roots, you ate leaves, you would have been in trouble. Your food would have been gone after maybe a few weeks, a few months. But we know in the world today, there's a volcano that obliterates an island, there's a forest fire. Seeds can endure. That's how plants regenerate. And seeds can last in the soil for a long time.
Yeah.
And so if you could eat seeds, you would have access to one of the last food sources. It wouldn't get you through forever, but maybe it could get you through for a year, another year. Same if you ate fungus,
What if you ate burrowing things like earthworms?
Yeah, and that could be part of it too. So it probably wasn't only seeds,
Yeah,
but that was probably a major part of the story. When it comes down to it, the world changed so quickly that organisms, they didn't have a chance to adapt through the normal processes and natural selection of genes shaping individuals and over the generations. So if you were alive the day the asteroid hit, you would have had to confront everything that was happening with whatever hand of cards you held.
Right.
And I think the Earth really did become this fickle casino. You were at the poker table, and it was a game for your life. And if you were big and you had to eat a lot of food and you grew slowly, that's a bad hand of cards. That's a dead man's hand, and that's the card that T-Rex had and Triceratops. But birds, they could grow fast, they could fly away easily, they could eat seeds, some of them maybe could eat worms and some of the other things, some of the fungus that was proliferating as things were dying. That was their good hand of cards that got them through. But then once the sunlight came back, there wasn't another asteroid that hit the Earth. I mean, the danger was done.
Right.
And the Earth could heal and regrow, and it was a time of rebirth. And from that time of rebirth came so much of the diversity of modern day birds. The birds we see around us, they evolved from those plucky ancestors that survived, that stared down the asteroid.
Yes. How did we come to understand initially that birds were dinosaurs? Because when I was a little kid, birds weren't dinosaurs.
No.
Right?
No.
And so how did we crack that case? And then there's also the case of how we figured out that they were survivors, right? Because once you figure out they're dinosaurs, you have to ask them, how the heck did they make it?
Exactly. It changes your whole perspective when you realize birds are dinosaurs. It means that the past really isn't the past. The age of dinosaurs did not end with the asteroid. Yes, most of the dinosaurs died, but they have this legacy that carried on. And in fact, there are over 10,000 species of birds today. And we know and we love everything from hawks to herons to hummingbirds. There are about 6,000-ish species of mammals. So more or less, there are double the number of birds than mammals today, which means there are double the number of dinosaurs than there are members of our own group.
Wow.
So in that way, the age of dinosaurs lives on. But, most of the famous dinosaurs died. Now, how do we know this? This is an idea that when I was growing up, in the late 80s and in the 90s, back home in northern Illinois, I remember the books we had at school, these books about dinosaurs, books I get from the library, and this bird thing, it wasn't really in there at all, and these dinosaurs, they were still shown, covered in scales, like they were overgrown lizards.
Exactly.
They were shown as dim-witted, these slow-moving, plotting animals, basically these evolutionary failures, just waiting, begging to go extinct. Asteroid, please come down, take us out of our misery. But we now know that's totally wrong. But it's not that this dinosaur bird idea is a new idea. It's not some crazy new theory proposed by some audacious young paleontologist. No, it actually goes back to the time of Darwin.
Oh.
It goes back to the early 1860s, but has had a tortured history, like many scientific theories. And so in 1859, Darwin wrote The Origin of Species. He presented his arguments for evolution by natural selection. And of course, that book took the Western world by storm.
It's based on timing, it sounds like it kicked off the American Civil War.
You know what? I don't think you can blame Darwin for that. But
is it a coincidence?
I don't know, But Darwin, but it is funny to think about it in a weird way, that this debate I'm talking about was happening mostly in England and in Europe while America was plunged into civil war, which is kind of mind-bending to think about it. So 1859, Darwin publishes, and it's controversial. I mean, my goodness, species evolved?
Right.
Everything wasn't just created by a creator at one point in time. This really got at the core of Western civilization, of ideas going back to the Greeks, and certainly what the British and many of the Americans at that time felt about the Earth. I mean, the Earth was not old, and species were species, and everything was fixed. So Darwin presents this idea, and of course, the public is skeptical. So Darwin and a lot of his friends were looking for this sort of slam dunk evidence. They wouldn't have used that term, but evidence that they could convince the public. It's one thing to write a book and tell all these stories about finches on the Galapagos and breeding pigeons and all that. I mean, Darwin made a really strong case. But is there something really visual? Could you find some fossil that captures evolution in action? And just a few years after The Origin of Species was published in the early 1860s, quarry workers in southern Germany discovered this incredible fossil It's something you could hold in the palm of your hands. It was obviously a bird. It had feathers. It had wings. Of course, it's a bird.
Right.
Nothing else alive today has feathers. No frog has feathers. No fish has feathers. So it's a bird. But it also had teeth in its jaws. It didn't have a beak. It had big claws on its hands, like a reptile. It had a long, bony tail. So it really did look like it was half reptile, half bird. Evolution in action.
1860s.
Early 1860s. So this fossil was called Archaeopteryx. It became known as the first bird, but a bird that we now would call the transitional species. It really does show birds evolving from reptiles. Now, around the same time, there was this small little skeleton of a meat-eating dinosaur called Compsognathus that was discovered in these same rocks in Germany. These were ancient lagoons. So about 150 million years ago in the Jurassic period, most of Europe was flooded, beautiful crystal blue lagoons, and these animals sometimes would fall in and get fossilized.
Buried, yeah.
Yeah, and so this little dinosaur had a skeleton that was clearly a dinosaur. It's just like a little version of a meat-eating dinosaur.
Yeah.
And its legs and its feet especially just looked like bird feet. And I think we see it today, right? You look at the foot of a chicken, whether you have chickens or whether maybe you eat chicken feet.
Absolutely.
It looks like a little T-Rex foot. It's covered in scales. It has claws. And so it was those similarities. That might seem a little bit glib or a little bit trite, but actually back in the 1860s, nobody knew what DNA was.
Right.
It was looking at these similarities in the skeletons. And so here you have this half bird, half reptile fossil, and you have this meat-eating dinosaur that has legs and feet that just look like a bird feet. So it was Thomas Henry Huxley, who was Darwin's great disciple, who put these pieces together. Now, Darwin was a posh, gentlemanly scientist who came from wealth. He was in his stately home, his manor house, writing. Huxley was a street brawler. Huxley was a man of the middle class, and Huxley loved being out in Britain. He would travel around giving lectures. He was maybe one of the first, people you could think of as like a sci-commer, science communicator.
Sagan before Sagan.
Sagan before Sagan. And really, literally, he was very famous across Britain, and he even came to America to give lectures. This was the 1860s, so he came soon after the Civil War to give lectures in America. He was really well known because he went out, and he didn't just give lectures at the universities. He went out and gave lectures to the working men of London and the working men of Britain. And very famously, in 1868, we're almost a decade beyond the origin of species, the public is starting to grapple with Darwin's ideas. People are starting to accept them. And it was then in the 1960s that a new generation of scientists started to find new fossils of small, fast, long-armed, lithe, fast-growing, dynamic, energetic raptor dinosaurs like Velociraptor, Deinonychus. These things were very bird-like, and so that resurrected the idea.
Even though they were terrestrial, they were walking.
They were walking. They were not flying.
In anatomy.
They were bird-like in anatomy.
With or without feathers.
Well, we'll get to this in 1 second, but bird-like in anatomy. So just looking at the bones, the long arms, the shape of the pelvis, how the pelvis is back swept, the shape of the neck, the long, gracefully curved neck, and dozens of other features. So very famously, the Yale paleontologist John Ostrom, he found Deinonychus, this raptor dinosaur, out on the border of Wyoming and Montana, out in the prairies. And he resurrects the idea that birds evolved from dinosaurs. And he writes this one-page paper in the journal Nature, the preeminent scientific journal. And it's like the Gettysburg Address. I think of it as the Gettysburg Address of evolution because it is so short, but it is so wise. And within a very small word count, he articulates that, birds did evolve from dinosaurs. And these dinosaur fossils are so bird-like. And these are the features that unite them. And it brought that idea back in vogue. But there were dissenters. There were contrarians. And a lot of ornithologists didn't accept it because
those are the people that study birds.
And people study birds. And I understand if you study birds and you're somebody who spent your life watching birds, describing birds, being around birds, and you're around, sparrows and hawks and
I know exactly what they said. Get the flock out of here.
Yeah, they probably did. Maybe in even more colorful language. But, it's like, my precious, birds that I love and study so much, that are so smart and they're warm-blooded and they're so capable of, songs and so many feats of intelligence. How could they come from a T-Rex? Like, it makes total sense, right?
Yeah.
And so a lot of ornithologists said, all right, to prove it, show us a dinosaur with feathers. Show us a dinosaur with feathers, because feathers are so intricate and so unique that, again, nothing else has them. We don't have feathers, fish, frog. If you find a feather today, a bird has been there. I mean, it's unmistakable. And so for a few decades, scientists were looking. Ostrom was looking, and he didn't find any. And why is that? Well, feathers are hard to turn into fossils. They're soft. They break down quickly. It's usually the hard bits, the bones, the teeth, the shells that turn into fossils more easily. And then in 1993, this film comes out that I think we're going to talk about a little bit later, Jurassic Park. I was 9 years old. I saw the film. They had the raptor dinosaurs. And the raptors are shown as very energetic and intelligent and very bird-like in many ways, but they don't have feathers because nobody had found, still, fossil of any dinosaur with feathers. And so I think people were starting to think that maybe it'll never happen. Oh, could this dinosaur bird link? Was this on the outs again? The ebb and flow of a scientific theory. But I tell this story in the Story of Birds in my new book about how this came to be. In 1996, 3 years after Jurassic Park came out, the world's paleontologists gathered in New York at the American Museum of Natural History. Special place for me. That's where I did my PhD, right?
Oh, nice.
West side of Central Park.
Yeah.
And it was autumn, the leaves were turning, and they gathered for this meeting, academic meeting, like many that I'm sure you've been to, as an academic scientist. And this rumor starts going around the museum, a little bit like a game of telephone, this rumor. There's this weird new dinosaur. Somebody found this new dinosaur. There's this crazy dinosaur. It's from China. I think it's from China. I think it's really small. No, maybe it's big. And so a Chinese scientist had come with some index card-sized photos. Of course, this was the day before smartphones or anything. So he printed out these photos of this little dinosaur, something you could hold in your arm, something about the size of a house cat. Clearly a dinosaur, clearly a meat-eating dinosaur.
Wingless?
Teeth in his jaws. Yeah, no wings, just kind of regular arms for a dinosaur, claws and so on. But it was covered in this halo of fuzz. It was covered in this fluffy stuff that really looked like down feathers. And so somebody...
By covered, you mean like
all over his body. And so somebody walks up to, finds John Ostrom, who by that time is in the twilight of his career, and shows him these photographs. And his knees literally got weak. He fell to the floor. And he recounted this. And there's other scientists who I know who were there when they were young. He fell to the floor and he started to cry. And he said, there it is. That's the feathered dinosaur we've all been waiting for. And it wasn't just one. This discovery opened the floodgates. It was discovered by a farmer. A farmer in northeastern China, Liaoning province. So this is a place that shares a long border with North Korea, way away from the tourist zone. And it's a land of rolling hills and factories and a lot of farmland. They farm a lot of the same stuff they do back home, where I'm from in the Midwest. And in the mid-90s, this farmer working his field started to just look in the rocks, crack open the rocks, and he found this beautiful skeleton covered in feathers. And then other farmers started to look. And all of a sudden, these fossils came out of the woodwork. And they just started appearing everywhere. And it just so happened that about 125 million years ago or so, this entire area, it was teeming with dinosaurs and other animals too, and plants. But there were some volcanoes in the distance. And occasionally one of them would erupt and basically bury these ecosystems and capture them in stone, kind of like when Vesuvius erupted, buried Pompeii. And so that's what locked in the feathers. It was a 1 in a trillion thing, but they were buried so quickly. This freeze frame. And now we have thousands of feather-covered dinosaurs. I mean, they're regularly discovered by farmers. And we don't just have ones that have fluffy bits. We have ones with full-on quill pen feathers. We have ones with wings. So this was the final nail in the coffin, the final trump card, whatever you want to say, that proved that Huxley was right and that Ostrom were right, and today's birds came from the dinosaurs.
So in your book, The Story of Birds, which is an amazing book.
Thank you. Thanks for the blurb again. It was fantastic to have your support early on.
Oh man, it's an amazing book. So the tell the story, in The Story of Birds, you do go into all this detail, and you go from the dinosaur to the bird, and you pointed out that there's twice as many species of birds as there are of mammals, roughly, right?
Yep, that's right.
So what does that say about the future? Because, now,
Yeah, the future. Well, like most paleontologists, I'm much more comfortable looking at the past than predicting the future. What we do know is that birds today are in one of their most vulnerable states, probably since they stared down the asteroid. And it's just because of climate change. It's because of land use change, because of pesticides. Yeah. Because, and this might rub people the wrong way because so many people love them, but cats kill so many birds. If you have a cat, keep your cats inside.
I've heard about that in Hawaii.
Yeah, and so there's many things that threaten birds. And just over the last 50 years or so, in the time really since my parents graduated high school, so from around 1970, there's been a loss of like billions of birds in the standing population just here in North America.
What?
So some species have gone extinct, but it's more that just the populations have crashed. Wow. And it is because of our effect on the planet.
So something you brought up earlier was how the speed of the asteroid hit is what was really key, because we can't adapt. Life evolves on the same time scale as geological changes normally happen.
Exactly.
But now we're looking at rapid climate change, and we're looking at rapid human changing of the planet's surface. Yes. So it's the rapidity of change.
Exactly. Because the Earth has gone through climate change before, and people will often, sometimes there's people that want to have a go at me and other geologists and other scientists, but normally it's well-intentioned. I go back home, I talk to my family, my neighbors, my friends, and they'll say things like, it's global warming, but it's been warm before, we shouldn't worry. And I'll say, yeah, you're right. This isn't the first time the Earth has warmed up. If somebody's told you that, that's wrong. That's extremist. No, the Earth has, of course, warmed up many times in the past. And there have been times where there have been volcanoes that have spewed out a lot of carbon dioxide, and that's led to global warming. And other times there have been other causes. But what's happening now is that it's happening so quickly. Normally this takes place over many thousands, tens of thousands of years of volcanoes spewing out and spewing out. What we're doing now is really within a few centuries. We are putting so much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. So it's the pace of change. Now, the Earth will be fine in the end. The Earth has endured everything. I think birds... birds are in trouble today, certain species, ones that only live on one island, ones that have a really peculiar diet or a peculiar way of reproducing. Of course, they're more vulnerable. But by and large, birds are survivors. They survived that asteroid. Yeah. They've survived all these whims of climate change. They outlasted the pterosaurs. Right. They outlasted all the other dinosaurs. Yeah. So I'm pretty confident birds will do well and make it through. I'm probably more confident with birds than with us, to be honest.
Okay, so if birds evolved from dinosaurs, like we evolved from fish, right? We're not fish. Yep. Are birds dinosaurs? If I'm eating some chicken, am I eating a dinosaur?
Yes. I mean, you could, in like a tortured genealogical argument, say humans are fish. And when Neil Schumann, who's one of my undergrad, profs, wrote his great book, Your Inner Fish, he plays on that, But you wouldn't really call humans fish because the fishy ancestors are so distant,
Vertebrate.
Exactly. Yeah. But birds really literally are dinosaurs in the same way a bat is a mammal.
Okay.
And so a bat is obviously a mammal. Bats evolved from mammals, part of the mammal family tree. They have hair, they feed their babies milk. They have the features of mammals. They're just the only mammals that evolved wings and started to flap around and fly. Birds are the dinosaur equivalent of that. They're part of the dinosaur family tree. They directly evolved from like velociraptor-type dinosaurs, but they're a peculiar type of dinosaur that got small, evolved wings, developed the ability to fly. But the difference is, not that we want to imagine it again, but if all mammals died except for bats, that's kind of the world we're in with the dinosaurs. All the other ones died, leaving only this one peculiar group. But they are very much dinosaurs. In the same way, I'm still a Brusatte. I'm still in the family. I've moved to Scotland. I moved away from the ancestral home in the Midwest. I have a different job. My ancestors, they were coal miners, steel workers. But even though I moved away, even though I'm different, even though I lose my hair, whatever, even though I'm different, I'm still in the family. And that's the way that birds are dinosaurs. Yeah. We do.
Yeah. Man, that is amazing. That is amazing. And it's all in the story of birds.
It's in the story of birds. It was great writing the book. It's, pop science book.
You mentioned how you were inspired by the movie Jurassic Park. Yes. And I imagine that, the previous generation of paleontologists, that studied dinosaurs were probably inspired by the Flintstones. So let's get into that. Media inspiration. Yeah,
that's what we're doing here. We're having a conversation that will be broadcast, by the media, and this gives, these conversations do helps frame the public perception of dinosaurs, but definitely the films, the cartoons, those have an outsized influence in how people around the world, not scientists like us, but your average person in any place, what their view of dinosaurs is.
In a way, man, you're living like every 4 or 5 year old's dream by being a paleontologist.
But my son is 6, Anthony. You're living his dream because space is his thing.
But at 4 years old, he was in a dinosaur.
I've been trying. But I have brought the, he understands the dinosaur bird thing. So if you ask Anthony his favorite dinosaur, he will tell you right away penguin.
Oh,
so he's good there.
Awesome.
But he would tell you 30 other things about, VY Canis majoris. And
well, let me tell you, I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old right now. They don't care at all about space, but they love dinosaurs.
Good for them.
Yeah. Now listen, if your job, when you think it couldn't get any better, I'm a paleontologist, I'm out in the field, you get the call to consult on the film Jurassic World. What was that like? Is it like getting the Nobel Prize call?
Because I know what that's like, getting a Nobel Prize.
I didn't compare, right?
No, I mean, I feel very charmed to be able to do it, and it's super fun. I've worked on the last 2, Jurassic World Dominion and Jurassic World Rebirth, and as far as communicating science, these movies reach such a big audience, and they're also just really fun. And it's really random how I was invited to do it. There've always been science advisors on the film, and there was a previous paleontology consultant, but he retired. And so when Colin Trevorrow, the director, was making Jurassic World Dominion, he started planning it out in 2018, right around the time the previous film had been released, because they're always, doing the next one. And it just so happened, totally coincidental, that when I wrote The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, my first pop science book, that my editor, Peter Hubbard, great editor, he had this brilliant idea. Let's release it around the time of this Jurassic World film in the summer of 2018.
That might sell a book or two,
that
right?
Might sell a couple books.
Yeah.
And you know what? It did. I think that did help get the word of the book out there. But later on that summer, a few months later, I got an email from said Colin Trevorrow. I looked at my Gmail account and Colin Trevorrow, and the subject line says, "I read your book." Okay? Now, for Jurassic Park fans, you might remember in the first film, the little kid, Tim, the little gadfly kid who's way into dinosaurs. He when he first meets Sam Neill's character, the paleontologist, he goes up holding, "I've read your book. So that's the subject line of the email.
Awesome.
I'm like, okay, something. So I look at the email, and it's just very brief. It says, "Hi, Steve, my name is Colin. I make scientifically inaccurate dinosaur films. I'm coming to Edinburgh for the Arts Festival. We have the big Fringe Festival every August. I'm coming with my family. I'd love to sit down and talk about dinosaurs." Now, I thought this email was a joke. I thought one of my students, I'm great. I have great students. I run a lab at the University of Edinburgh.
Did you recognize the name immediately? Or
I knew the name. No, because he's the director of the first Jurassic World and the producer of the series. And he, he's a pretty well-known filmmaker. And, I'm not like a huge film buff.
Until you said it, I didn't know it.
Yeah, but you know what? Well, we won't tell Colin. I hope you're not watching. He's from this part of the world too. But no, so I thought, you know what? This is one of my students is doing this. They're having a go at me. Steve's getting a big head with his book. Let's have some fun. But I passed it along to my publisher, to Peter and his team at what is now Mariner Books, HarperCollins, and they said, "Okay, we'll look into this." And a few hours later, they called and were like, "Yeah, that's him. Like, that's his email. Like, he does want to talk to you." It's like, "Oh my God, okay." Wow. So we had a brief phone call, Colin and me, and then he did come to Edinburgh a few weeks later, and his family was off seeing a show. I took him to the Scotch Malt Whiskey Society, which is this club that bottles up casks of whiskey because we're in Scotland. Right, but it was noon, so we didn't have whiskey. Right, we didn't want, his family was at this kid show. But we had really good coffee. They had great coffee. We sat for 3 hours drinking this fantastic coffee in the new town of Edinburgh. And he said right away, "I'm starting to plan the next film. It's going to be the one that finishes this trilogy of Jurassic World. It's going to tie up a lot of the story arcs, a lot of the different characters, the human characters. And I want some new dinosaurs in there. And I want some of these dinosaurs to have feathers." So that's one of the first things he told me. And I said, "Oh, that's music to my ears. Yes." And he said, Can you help me do it? Do you want to help me? Do you want to come onto the team? I said, absolutely. So people sometimes think, that, or give me credit for bringing feathers to the franchise. No, it was Colin's vision from the start, but I was very happy to be there, by his side.
So does it start with like dinosaur design or script writing of their behavior, or where do you begin, and then does it evolve to you're actually on set, or how does that play out?
I'm really an advisor. I'm a consultant. So I just feel it's my responsibility to make sure the science is represented. I know that, again, they're not nature documentaries. I know that they're not going to design these dinosaurs strictly based on only the exact things we know from fossils. These have to be characters. They have to look good. You have to recognize them on the screen. They have to do stuff. They have to drive a story. So the scientific accuracy is part of that. But they've always had science advisors. I respect that deeply. You would know better than me, but I mean, all the Star Treks, all the Star Wars. They have astrophysicists working on these, so they might.
I worked on one.
Did you? Which one?
It was a movie where they had a ship. I don't remember the name of it. They had a ship with neutron stars, a power source at the front of the ship. So I helped them with the design of that.
Yeah.
So
that must have been fun, right? That must have been really fun.
Well, it was cool, but it was kind of like I was an assistant professor, so I'm feeling the pressure. I'm like, I gotta get this right. Let me do all these calculations. And let me,
That's right. You got to do the maths of it. Or do they have you write in equations on the board? I've heard some science advisors.
I've done that for TV. Yeah, I've done that for TV.
Yeah, because then you got to get those right. Oh my God, if you mess up.
Well, but here's the thing, for those of us, because sometimes people push back online because, there is scientific accuracy, but there's also the fact that it's interfacing with storytelling and entertainment.
That's it.
And how you balance that. Because you know what they're trying to get at, right? They're not; these aren't your students in the university, right?
No.
You have to balance these different elements, and so things get a little loose-ish sometimes, not necessarily quite. How do you deal with that? And do you have a tension with that internally?
Yeah. I've learned to be comfortable with it, and I'm okay as long as it's not too outside of the bounds.
Exactly.
So I want the science to be represented. I want the dinosaurs to be realistic, even if they're maybe not 100% in line with what we know from the fossils. Now, if I was consulting, and I do this, quite a lot on nature documentaries and dinosaur shows, like Prehistoric Planet and Walking with Dinosaurs.
That's the one I watched, Walking with
Oh,
Dinosaurs.
yeah. So I work on these shows, and that's very different. These are produced by, the BBC in many cases. I do a lot of Nova stuff. I'm often on these Nova shows, which is probably why I'm here. Those are different. You got to make sure that you're spot on with the actual evidence, the actual fossils. It's like when I write my books. I am writing them. They're nonfiction. I'm the specialist. I'm the paleontologist. They need to be accurate. I'm not going to tell you that some bird is 30% bigger than it really was just to make the story better. That's not going to happen.
Well, there's another thing that happens that I find that I do, and that is, and this is a problem I had before I was a person who was making stuff for the public. I would look at books written by certain scientists in certain fields that I'm not going to say in the world of physics.
Sure.
Right? And if you're a scientist, you can distinguish between when they're saying, we know this, the evidence shows this, versus here's what we think or believe or where we're speculating. So I will speculate, but I try to make it as clear as possible that this is not observed, known knowledge. Right?
Absolutely. And I think that's the key. And for folks like you and me that do a lot of this, I think we just get comfortable with it and we find a way, or we try our best to make that clear. When I write my books, like in the Storybirds and the Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs, I often open the chapters with some sort of vignette, some sort of fictional story of some, a T-Rex hunting or a terror bird coming out of the forest, onto the plains. Or
you make it cinematic.
Yeah, and and I only do it for a few pages because I'm not a very good fiction writer. I can't carry it. The thought of like trying to write a novel or something that scares me. But also I don't want there to be too much speculation. And then I really try to make clear in this fictional story or in this story I envision this, and this is what we really know. But you do have to tell stories to reach people, whether it's a film or whether it's a book. In your book, you did a great job with that, and I try to do the same. People want stories, and we're trying to reach not the PhDs and not the other professors and not even our students who are studying science. We're trying to reach everybody. And when I write these books and when I do the films, I really try to remember what it was like as a teenager growing up in the Midwest, becoming obsessed with fossils, and to try to channel that. And the best thing for me it's great when your book's reviewed by the New York Times and they say it's good, or you get some award. But the thing that's most special to me is when I hear from readers. So if anybody out there knows my books, I'm easy to find online. Please do get in touch, seriously. But over the last, year or so, I mean, a few times a week I get messages from people, and there was a guy, a long-haul truck driver, who was listening to my dinosaur book on audio. There was a kid who's in his early 20s who was stationed overseas in the military, who was reading the book, to pass the time. This is great. That's who I want to reach. And to do that, you have to tell stories, and you can't write academically.
No.
And it's the same with the films. These are blockbuster films, but they're so important. That's the concept most people have of dinosaurs. And you can nitpick on the films, and certainly paleontologists will nitpick, that dinosaur is a bit too big, or the anatomy of the foot looks wrong, or it probably wouldn't have had that color. But Jurassic Park was probably the best thing that's happened to paleontology, at least in the last century. I mean, that brought dinosaurs to the public in this bold, brash, bombastic, but hugely engaging, entertaining new way. And the amount of interest in paleontology exploded in the early 90s.
Because you leave the movie and want to learn more.
Oh, yeah. And so many museums put on dinosaur exhibits. So many museums hired dinosaur paleontologists. The number of jobs that were created because of that film. Same at universities. They wanted to put on dinosaur classes, especially for non-majors. Hire a paleontologist. And so many young people around the world, not just in the U.S., not just in Britain where I live now, but around the world. I have colleagues from Argentina, colleagues from Mongolia that say that watching those films, that's what got them into paleontology. Now they're discovering new dinosaurs. They're making groundbreaking scientific progress, all because of these films. So that is important.
So this is 6 films over 30 years.
7 now with Rebirth that came out.
But this is
recently.
decades. And in this century, man, science has been evolving so rapidly. So if you go back from the first Jurassic Park in 1993, right, up until today, have the movies gotten better at incorporating the latest knowledge? And, it's almost like that could potentially ruin characters.
I could.
Right?
Well, that was the issue with the feathers. So when Jurassic Park came out in 1993, it became, a global phenomenon. I mean, it's still on the list of best films of all time.
It's right up there with the Fast and the Furious.
There we go. Yeah, absolutely. Yes, and Zoolander. And, I don't know. No, not to rip on.
What else has 12? A series of 12 movies, 18 movies.
But it became
James Bond.
There you go. Indiana Jones, Star Wars. But it became such a famous film. And in 93, nobody had ever found a fossil of a dinosaur with feathers. But the first ones were found in 96 by farmers in China. So, okay, we know the Velociraptor's wrong. But already that was an icon. That was the brand, those raptors. You weren't just going to paste feathers on them in the next film, So that persisted for many films, these scally dinosaurs. And more recently, we've gotten feathers. This is what Colin wanted to do.
Do you think they got the information that we have this new information?
They knew it. Yeah, they knew it. It's just, look, I mean, that Velociraptor, that became a household name.
Absolutely.
Those scenes
Never
of
heard
the
of it
raptor,
before.
No.
But once Jurassic Park came out.
Exactly. And the scenes of them pack hunting and opening the doors. I mean,
and
that's and being smart. I mean, there's some artistic license there, but those are iconic movie scenes. So no, Coca-Cola is not just going to change its logo one day.
Right.
So they were kind of stuck with that. But Colin wanted to bring some feathered dinosaurs in. And it's not that the raptors have been changed to be feathered, but it's other characters have been introduced. Other types of raptors that do have feathers. We have this one Pyroraptor that has feathers, has wings. It's what a real Velociraptor could look like. Could not. So it's really funny. I think the name sounds so in your face, Pyroraptor, but it's called that because it's fossils, and there's only a few bones were found in France after a forest fire. That's why.
Really?
That's the secret behind that name. I wish it was a dinosaur that we can see from the bones of its throat that it could breathe fire. But
because you do have these chemical warfare reptiles, right? You have venom, and you have acids and things. So why not emit? Take methane, which you have methanogens, right? Create a methane bladder. And have some way of igniting it with 2 teeth that rub together or something.
What? Who knows what evolution will make? Who knows?
So in terms of dinosaurs in the media, where do you think? Because there's a lot of cartoon dinosaurs, and it seems like they typically reflect the older ideas of dinosaurs. So who's getting it right? Do you think that the portrayals of dinosaurs now are catching up to? Because I tell people a lot, but like, the physics that you see in books, that's the stuff that was discovered a long time ago. That's been cleared, right?
Yeah.
The latest stuff. That's why when you're an expert, you have to be current. The latest stuff.
Yes.
So are there, entertainment depictions, media depictions of dinosaurs that are the closest to the modern understanding?
You're absolutely right that there are older concepts and older stereotypes of dinosaurs that still do persist. And I see them sometimes, I see them in kids' books and I kind of cringe. There's a raptor that's shown naked and scally and it's drooping his hands. We know that's not true, by the way, the hand drooping thing. Nope, they would have held their hands inwards like this. So there are things like that I see. I think generally, though, things are catching up. I think most books are pretty good now. Most publishers, especially that do kids' books, they do try to get scientists to consult or write the books. The films in Jurassic, you still see some of these scally dinosaurs, but we do have these newer ones with feathers, and I think that is changing. I think where you really see it really good, though, is in some of the best documentaries that are done. So Walking with Dinosaurs, which I've worked on for many years as a consultant, they had a new series last year, and these are really accurate, up-to-date dinosaurs. Prehistoric Planet, which was an Apple BBC production. I consulted a bit on that, but it was they hired a paleontologist, Darren Naish, a friend of mine in Britain. He was working with that team full-time on staff for quite a long time, getting the realism down. And so you see a super modern, current view of dinosaurs in Prehistoric Planet. So those are the ones I would check out. When you're making a film, and Jurassic, yes, but even more so the nature documentary types, Prehistoric Planet or Walking with Dinosaurs. Those have to show dinosaurs doing things. It can't just show a fossil, captured in stone. They have to be doing things. They have to be moving. They have to be mating. They have to be eating. They have to be confronting each other and fighting. And sometimes they're sleeping or swimming or whatever. They have to be doing stuff. Now, we don't always have a great understanding from fossils exactly how dinosaurs would move and exactly what they would do. But sometimes we have enough evidence from the bones, we can see the muscle attachments on the bones, and specialists that really know muscles can actually reconstruct how big those muscles would be. Kind of like when forensic, like anthropology, where, specialists can use the shape of a skull or whatever to to make the face. So people that really study muscles can do that. Sometimes we do get the feathers and skin preserved. So there are cases where the fossils can tell us what the dinosaur would have looked like, and even sometimes like the range of the motion of the limbs. But the other thing is computer modeling. So doing 3D models of these dinosaurs and putting them into animation software. Oftentimes the same software scientists use as animators use for films. And just seeing what looks realistic based on modern day animals. So looking at how birds move and looking at how reptiles move and seeing just what passes the sniff test with these dinosaurs based on the size and the scale and the proportions of their skeletons.
One last one. So things always go wrong in these movies. So if you were going to make an island now, park of dinosaurs, and we somehow, unextinct them,
oh my God,
how do you get it right? Where would you use Antarctica or Greenland or say, what's that island? Skye or Man?
Oh yeah, Isle of Skye. Yeah, sure. Rampaging Scottish dinosaurs.
But is it possible to get it right, or is it just like, don't do that?
I think there's always going to be a story, and I don't know where the franchise will go. I hope there's future films. It's a very famous, successful franchise. What I would love to see, though, and if any of the producers, if Frank or Pat or any of the producers, Mr. Spielberg, are watching, let's get into a future film some of these crazy birds that took over the dinosaur niches after the classic dinosaurs died with the asteroid. I'm talking about terror birds, demon ducks, elephant birds, the giant soaring birds with 20-foot wingspans. Let's have T-Rex and Giganotosaurus and Velociraptor meet these things that took over from them.
I think the Godzilla franchise already did that, right? You got the big butterfly.
There's some weird stuff in Godzilla. So Gareth Edwards, who directed the Jurassic World Rebirth, who's fantastic, he directed the Godzilla. He's got great vision of these animals on screen. So Gareth, if you're listening, let's do this.
All right. So I'm going to have to read this because there are names. I don't ever remember names in movies. So I'm going to read some names here. So You know, Jurassic Park, you say it inspired you
Yes,
to get into
it did.
paleontology.
It did.
And, you know, there are some excellent characters
Yes,
in that
there are.
movie. There's Dr. Grant, played
Yes,
by Sam
that's
Neill.
right.
Dr. Sattler, played
Yep.
by Laura Dern.
Yep.
And Dr. Malcolm by Jeff Goldblum.
Yes, sir.
All right, so Dr. Grant,
Yep.
Dr. Sattler, or Dr. Malcolm, who would you rather have as your thesis advisor?
Oh, Dr. Sattler as thesis advisor for
Yes.
sure. Yeah.
Why? What did she...
Well, she's a paleobotanist in the
Yeah,
film, but
yeah,
she is clearly very good with people in the film. She
Okay.
has her head screwed on straight. She kind of, keeps tabs on Sam Neill's character while still being, she organizes the stuff and makes sure everything's running smoothly, but is also a world-class scientist. That's what you want for a
what you
supervisor.
want,
I got a
yeah.
lot of students and have had a lot over the years. They can be a judge if I come anywhere close to that perfect ideal
So
of a supervisor.
I did this summer research as an undergraduate before I went to
Yeah.
graduate school, and I met so many disgruntled graduate students.
Yeah.
Who they were
Yeah.
like, everybody talks about research, but
Yeah.
make sure that your thesis advisors are human.
That's right. And for any younger people that are listening that might want to go into science, if you want to do a PhD, talk to students in the lab or the people you might want to work with, see what they're like.
That's right. So which one would you rather have a coffee with?
Oh, probably Ian Malcolm. That's Jeff Goldblum's character because
Yeah.
he's nuts. I mean,
There you
his
go.
brain's
That's
on a
who you
different
like to have-
wavelength.
That's who you want to
Yeah,
have coffee with.
I would just sit and just listen to him talk.
Yeah, like I'm doing with you right now. Okay, so who when I look at a show like The Big Bang Theory,
Yeah.
right, the sitcom,
Yeah.
I'm like, I know every one of those guys in real life, right, and they're all from Caltech, coincidentally.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So who reminds you of your old colleagues?
Of those characters?
Yes,
Well,
yes.
that would be Dr. Grant. That would be Sam Neill's character.
Yeah.
That was really nailed, that character. Really well. It was based, when Michael Crichton wrote the book, he did model the character on a few different real paleontologists.
really?
So,
Okay.
so Dr. Grant's persona that Sam Neill plays, I mean, it really captures a scientist who's, a great expert in his field, but also a little bit awkward, but has great ambition, great motivation. In the new films is
Right.
Jonathan Bailey, who is the
Yeah.
paleontologist. He plays it really well. I showed up
Yeah.
on set and met him, and we just so happened to be dressed almost identically.
Wow.
The way the costume people put him into costume with his flannel shirt and stuff.
They based
So,
him on you.
I wish. He was just named People's Sexiest Man Alive. So yeah, you're right. They based
I don't
him
know
on me.
how
Oh
they-
yeah, absolutely.
Like somebody needs to like literally, I should be winning that award the way Jordan won NBA Finals,
Oh,
man.
yeah.
And I'm like, how did they miss me with sexiest scientist? Like I literally have been the
I don't
sexiest
know.
scientist.
The podcast here's
like
done one
92.
season, right? So when
Yeah,
it goes
yeah.
on, when you write more books,
That's right.
next year.
Last question, because this is affecting everything. How is AI going to change your field?
Good question. I don't know how AI might change everything. It might doom
Yeah.
us. I don't know. It's going to change publishing, that's for sure. I hope I can write more books.
Right.
But in the field, we recently published, just a few months ago, we published this paper in Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences on using
very
AI.
prestigious. Yeah,
And it was super cool. We were so happy to get it published there. Using AI to help classify dinosaur footprints. This is something that came. It's a physicist. Gregor Hartman is his name. He's now a good friend of mine. We just texting about the basketball playoffs. Not to date the podcast.
I'm a big fan too, man. of the NBA
Yeah. Well, I grew up in
playoffs,
Chicago, the Chicago area in the early 90s. So I can tell you every moment of every one of those Bulls teams. And Gregor and I talk about this. But he's a physicist who's become a machine learning expert. He's a professor in Berlin. And he was reading my dinosaur book. He was reading The Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs with his son, who's really into dinosaurs. So he reached out to me and said, I read your book, enjoyed your book. Is there anything that AI can do? And I said, well, we have these footprints on the Isle of Skye that we find, dinosaur footprints, but we don't know if they were made by the meat
Wait a
eaters or
minute.
the plant eaters.
Was there a news article about this? 'Cause I think
There
I
were,
saw
yeah,
that.
there were some news articles
Yeah, I saw that.
because Gregor made an app that you
Right.
can use, and anybody, if you find a dinosaur footprint, you can take a photo and put it in the app, and it won't tell you this is a T-Rex, but it will tell you what the most similar footprints are, and it will basically make a prediction with some confidence intervals. So that's I think a good use of AI.
Right,
this is
right.
this unbiased, basically untrained, machine learning algorithm, and it tells us that some of these footprints we found on the Isle of Skye were probably made by plant-eating dinosaurs, which would make them the oldest in the world of their group.
Wow,
So as a
wow.
scientist, that's what got me interested in
Yeah.
building a tool, and it was
Right.
meeting Gregor that made it happen. Now we're working with Gregor to build these huge family trees of mammals. That's what I'm doing in my research now. A big part of it is studying mammal evolution, where
Yeah.
our mammal ancestors came from, and working with Gregor is helping us get these new algorithms that can make better family trees, that can find them using likelihood algorithms and stuff, can find them faster. So it's very
Man,
exciting.
I wish I had that app in 2009. I was in Western Colorado with the Discovery founder, John Hendricks. May he
Cool.
rest in
Yeah.
peace. And he goes, "You want to see the dinosaur footprints?" And I'm like, "Yeah." We go to look at this plain rock, and he pours water, and suddenly
There
there
you
it
go.
is. And I'm
It's
like, "What
magical.
is that?" Yeah, that's magical.
It is, because literally that dinosaur was there. In
Right.
that case, probably 150 million years ago. So it was walking where you're walking. When I take my students to Sky, that's the magic. And when
Yeah,
it comes
it
down
was
to it,
magical.
that's the magic of fossils. These are ambassadors from a time long ago,
Well,
a time
Steve,
far away.
This has been a magical
This
interview.
is fun.
Thank you,
Thank
sir,
you
for
so
coming into
much.
Particles
Yes,
of Thought.
my pleasure. Thanks for
Yes.
all you do as a science
Thank you as
communicator.
well.
Thank you.